Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground is brought to you by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.
We're here today at Nisswa's Pioneer Village, and we're in front of what is probably our most popular attraction. Children that come here love this little red schoolhouse. Even though they go to a school with computers and all the modern conveniences, they are fascinated by this. The school actually was called the Pillager School, which means, of course, that it was in Pillager, Minnesota, and it was moved here. It was built in 1896, and it operated as a school until 1950. That meant either to come in from school or to come in from recess. So if you come in, you first enter the cloakroom. This is where the children would have congregated and come in first in the morning. You'll see the wood box is over here. This had to be well kept and well stocked with wood for the stove during the day. If you look at this floor, you can see where they were chopping wood and where they split the wood, and they didn't always meet the piece of wood they were trying to split. Sometimes they hit the floor instead. So that to us is very interesting. A little bit about the school itself. If you noticed, it was red. The thing about a country school is everybody donated either their time, their money, or the leftover materials that they had around their farm. In the case of the red paint, of course, that was the red paint left over from the barn. The labor was always donated. The land would be donated. One farmer would give a small portion of his quarter section or whatever he had on the street, and that's where they would build the school. All the people built it, pitched in together. Over here is an interesting thing about country schools. Most of them were prototypes, and if you see this picture here, that is a prototype exactly like this school. The boys in the school would be very old in terms of what the grade they were at, because they would have to leave early to get in to take in the crops. They would have to start late to do the opposite. And this was something interesting in my own family. My grandfather was a great kidder, and he always said that he couldn't learn anything, so he married the teacher, which in fact he did. And my grandmother had an actual degree. A lot of the people teaching in these schools had just certificates or whatever, had gone 6 weeks or whatever. My grandmother, for that day, which was in the late 1800s, actually had a degree. So I could never figure out how he could say he had married the teacher, and later when they both died, I saw they were both about the same age. Well, that was the same thing. He had to go and take care of the crops in the beginning and the end of the year. We're now in the back of the schoolroom proper, and I wanted to mention just a few things about the teachers and the decorum that they were intended to follow, expected to follow. A teacher could not get married during the school year. If she did, her contract would be terminated. Here's some rules for teachers, and it's interesting. It tells what they were supposed to do. Teachers will fill the lamps, clean chimneys each day. Men teachers may take one evening each week for courting purposes, or 2 evenings a week if they go to church regularly. After 10 hours in school, the teachers may spend the remaining time reading the Bible or other good books. Women teachers who marry or engage in unseemly conduct will be dismissed, and there are a number of other rules like this. As I said, my grandmother was a teacher. When she married my grandfather, out the door, but she was favorite teacher around, but they couldn't keep her any, or wouldn't maintain her contract any longer. We're in the main schoolroom now, and you can see the way this is set up. Remember, there would be 1 through 8 grades in here. The older students would study on this side of the room. The younger would be on the other. And if you notice, you can see the smaller desks that graduate basically to much larger desks. The larger desks could hold 2 students if need be. From this vantage point in the room, you can see what we have up there. First of all, we have the stove, very important to a country school like this, because it was very difficult to heat this drafty old barn. In fact, many times they would cancel school between January and February during the coldest months. That's an interesting stove there, because you'll notice it takes advantage of the gases 3 times. The fire is in the lower box. The smoke or gas would proceed to the box just above it, and then it proceeds to the top box, which gives out heat 3 times from the same gas. The way this would be conducted is the teacher, of course, has her desk there in the corner. She would do the different classes individually. In other words, maybe there was only 1 class in the 1st grade. She would bring that student up, and they would sit at the stool that you can see in front of her desk, and she would go over their lesson with them. Once that's done, they would go back and the next student would come, and so on. The older students would actually help the younger students. The books that you see on the desks here, paper was very expensive. So rather than use paper, they would have these slates, which basically is a piece of slate that was bordered with a board, and they would write with chalk on this and then erase it when they wanted to do something else. So each child used to have a slate of its own. So you can see how patriotic these students were. There's a picture of Lincoln up there, picture of Washington here. So they would learn a lot about just their immediate area, their state, and anything that should be known toward the patriotism of the country. When we started out with this school and everything was new, the lighting was strictly by lamp. The building was always situated such that the sun would give the windows plenty of light during the day. In fact, you will have some schools that have windows on only one side of the room, because that's the side where the light from the sun came in the most. This school does have windows on both sides so that you would have it as it swung around during the day. The thing they wanted was their children to have a good education, and they gave their time, their money, their possessions and everything else to make sure that they had a good school district. And they all pitched in. They would paint the schoolhouse probably once a year, maybe not that much, but whether it needed it or not, because they were very proud of their school. And in a small district like this, that was the one thing that they had to be proud of.
If you enjoyed this segment of Lakeland Public Television's Common Ground, consider making a contribution at lptv.org.